there, and good morning, good evening, good afternoon to you, wherever you might be in the world. Here in Western Australia, it's a lovely warm day. We're looking at 34 degrees. But before I waffle on, I should actually remind you and welcome you actually. If you're a newbie to the channel, thank you for joining me. I hope you will find the content interesting and something that's helpful to you. If you're a returning visitor, as always, I thank you very much for being part of my journey. Today, of course, we're going to be talking about Larimar, which is a really beautiful crystal. But before we start on that, as always, I want to remind you I put timing stamps in the description so that you can jump to the areas of interest for you. And this is largely because I do tend to waffle and I can go down a rabbit warren because a lot of the information I put up here is experiential. If it's not my own experience, it might be somebody else's. And if it's information that I've obtained simply by doing some research on a crystal that I know to be popular, then I'll let you know that as well. So anyway, yes, I do go down a waffle every now and again, that rabbit warren, and those timing stamps are there so you can just jump to the section that you want to. And I'm not going to be offended if you don't watch the whole video. Who can, really? I mean, time is precious to all of us, and my videos do tend to go for a long time. So anyway, without further ado, let's get cracking. Let's talk about Larimar. So for this video, I'm actually going to give you a bit of a description or history, more so than I have done on previous videos. And this is because Larimar is such an interesting stone. Now, as you see here, it is completely unusual. It's absolutely beautiful. And this one, because you can see all that green crusty stuff around it, this is Larimar in the rough. And it's obviously had a bit of a slice taken off it so that we can actually see how the rock itself has got all these beautiful white patterns. Now, the background of Larimar, or perhaps the current, is it's also known as dolphin stone or blue pectolite. Another stone it's known by, well, another name, there's a couple actually, Atlantis stone or Staphylias stone, all a bit intense, I think, personally. And it was originally discovered in 1916. We'll talk about the mineral information in a little while, but obviously it was discovered by a Spanish gentleman who created the name partly after his daughter, I believe, who I think her name was Larissa. And oh, that's right. So the story is Mar is the Spanish name for ocean. So it was basically Larissa's ocean is how he came to the name. Anyway, you can certainly tell by looking at the stone itself why it was referred to as the ocean, because I've actually seen, and I'm sure you have as well, the ocean photographs that are where the ocean is so pristine and clear that you can actually see the little sand mounds, if I can speak, underneath the surface of these really clear blue waters. So it's just an incredible crystal. As always, I go into a deeper metaphysical review of properties in other slides down the track, but from an overview perspective, it's considered to be a highly spiritual crystal. It's associated with the divine feminine. Of course, we're not talking gender here. I always put that little disclaimer in. We're talking about energy and the nourishing and nurturing of the mind, body, and spirit. It's said to bring serenity and open the access to the higher realms. And it's definitely recommended for people who are desiring to increase their personal vibration and expand their spiritual awareness. This is that achieving their personal best, or walking their life path journey, or having it revealed to them. At this point in time, I would say that because there is the reference to calling it dolphin stone, dolphins within the metaphysical circles are said to be high communicators, and this is probably where the original idea of access to the higher realms comes in. Interestingly, it's linked with the sun signs of the Zodiac, the Leo and the Pisces. And I say interesting because if you know anything about Leos, they are a fire sign. So definitely they benefit from soothing, calming, light blue colours. And when we talk about the Pisces, they are a water sign without a doubt. And Atlantisite obviously reflects water. So perhaps it's that the Pisces, they have a little bit of fire, they can become turbulent. As far as their emotional expression goes, or internal well-being. So perhaps it's recommended for Pisces because it's got this calming effect to it. But realistically, it doesn't matter what your star sign is. Anybody can work with Larimar. It is an incredibly beautiful crystal, not just visually, but its metaphysical attributes are what I would consider to be outstanding as well. Hope you don't mind hearing that dog. I don't know if you can. That's the little boy. That's my Toby playing on his squeaky toys. So as I said before, if you were a geologist, which of course I'm not, so if you're a geo and you've got any contributions to make, please feel free. You are invited and your comments would be welcome. But it's considered to be a pectolite, which is part of the silicate family. That's all a little bit intense for me. Do your Googling if you want to know more about it. But basically, in this particular instance, it's only found in the Dominicans, okay? So we need to put that out there right from the get-go. It is extremely rare, and the value of it increases with the intensity of the blue. It's considered to be the bluer the Larimar, the higher the quality, and also the rarer it is. Now, it is apparently, the blue comes from a mix of copper in the crystal itself, as a substitution for calcium. I'm not quite sure what that means, but I'll let somebody else explain that for us because I'm no scientist. That's the bottom line. What I understand is the rarity is actually largely dictated because it was already only being sourced in one location, the Dominicans. It was already rare. But what happened is they've shut the mines down. Where they actually get them from, they've closed them down because apparently there was fatalities at the mine site, and probably too many, which obviously is down to poor management. But they decided the best way to address this problem of poor mine management was actually to shut the mines down. And all that has done, well, besides saving a few lives, I don't mean to minimise that, but from a buyer perspective, it's just absolutely pushed the price through the roof, apparently. To get your hands on Larimar these days, you're going to have to pay for it. The other interesting factor is that while it's associated with the ocean, it actually was formed through volcanic eruptions. It forms in the cavities of the lava, and this is what apparently gives it the mingling of these shades of white and the blue, the patterns of it. Any brown areas that we can see, like on this particular crystal here, they are apparently because of oxidation or hematite. For those people that don't know what hematite is, I think it's just a big fancy word for iron ore, but it just means there's a bit of iron in the actual mix when it was being created by divine hand. I say no accident. There is some points here about that blue. It can fade. Just be aware of that. It can fade when it's exposed to too much light or heat. I'd have to go through my jewellery box, but I think that the only Larimar that I've got is actually a pendant, okay? Because they're very small and they're single-faceted, that kind of thing. But, funnily enough, I don't wear it. But at the end of the day, coming down to buying tips, yes, fake Larimar is apparently a real issue on the market with many imitation stones that are made from dyed howlite. So there are some tips for identifying what's real and what's not. But the first instance, I guess, to be aware of is if you were to go to the Dominican Republic and into the non-tourist areas, I am informed through the internet, of course, that you can pick up Larimar for really, really cheap prices for mid-grade Larimar. But the secret is that you've got to go to the non-tourist areas where it's being sold to the locals, because obviously anything that's sold to the tourists is going to have its price bumped up. So bearing in mind that most of us don't go to the Dominicans, we're looking to buy online. And this is going to be rife with risk. As I said, with the fake Larimar, there's always a chance that when we're looking online, in the first instance, we don't get to see the colour really well. We don't necessarily get to see the patterns very well, because I just don't think photographs do crystals justice a lot of the time. But anyway, this is what I found online. You can find it too. You can also do your own sources, which is that fake Larimar has a more uniform colour compared to the real Larimar. And it's usually displayed in a mix of blues with white veining. So I think on here, I would be inclined to think that on this photograph, I'm looking at genuine Larimar in all of these images I've put here, okay? I'm not 100% confident about that, I'm just letting you know. The real giveaway would be, I guess, if it's a lot cheaper. Unless, and this is what I always say, unless you're going to the source of the supplier. So if there are some locals in the Dominican Republic, they may have a whole heap of Larimar and be flogging it off online very cheap. So you would know when you go and look at the seller rather, see where they're at. If they're from the Dominicans and the Larimar is quite reasonably priced, you can be reasonably confident with that, but you can always contact the seller and ask them, where did this come from? From my perspective, if I was buying online, I would want to know a certificate or have a reputable seller, one that is known to be honest, and at least a certificate of authenticity with the crystals itself that I'm purchasing. Because if you're paying top dollar for something, you want to make sure you get the real deal. Now, there are colour variations. As I said, that really beautiful deep blue, that is said to be the most valuable, but it can come in different shades of sky blue and even a bit of a greenish blue. And the genuine information that I got as far as identifying the real from the fake is that real Larimar is going to have visible white veining that runs through the stone, and we can see this on all of them. And the other key factor is translucency. And when we check for slight translucency, that's when we hold the stone up to the light. What I do though is I actually put the torch on my phone, because obviously we all have a mobile phone these days. And this is another reason why I say try not to buy online. If you've got a local distributor, go and see them, because you can actually check it out then. I hold the crystal up and then I put my torch behind the actual crystal to see if I can see a bit of light going through it. That's how we check for translucency, and you would be able to do that with Larimar. Basically, yeah, look, always buy, if possible, from a trusted jeweler or wholesaler. Now, what are the other tips? Obviously, the colour. It can seem a bit glassy at times. The lab-made stuff apparently looks more glassy. Okay, so I'm just checking my notes here. I forgot to mention when I was talking about the mineral content, I did put it on the slide and I hope that you saw it, that Larimar is not the hardest crystal in the world. It's quite soft. So you can actually test Larimar to see if it's real by giving it a little scratch. That was one of the recommendations. I've got to say, I'm always loath to scratch something, not a crystal anyway, but you could do that if you felt inclined to. Then the other one is to check whether or not it's photosensitive, and that means that it doesn't change. Right, if it doesn't change colour when it's exposed to heat or light, then it's not genuine. I also need to put something in here, because there's another comment that I found as far as testing the genuine to the fake that refers to genuine Larimar actually doesn't have light pass through it. So we're talking about translucency just before. So I guess the idea is that, and geos, if you're out there, please correct me on this if I'm wrong. It might be a little bit like carnelian, where some carnelian you can get a little bit of a glow when you put the light behind it. I'm talking about the really dark coloured carnelian. But when it comes to Larimar, apparently if you get a lot of light coming through it, it's most likely made of resin or glass. And obviously if it's made of plastic or resin, when exposed to heat, the fake stuff's going to start to melt. And apparently most of the sellers, according to this site that I found, test the shop before they actually pass it on to the customers, which I would expect, to be honest. If I was going to, we've got wholesalers locally. If I was going to my wholesaler and they were selling Larimar, and it was the first time they'd bought from a supplier and they hadn't tested one of the crystals for authenticity, I would be extremely disappointed in them. But for online purposes, do check the reviews, check the customer feedback. Remember, it's never going to be 100% accurate, because a lot of people just put up positive feedback because there's been some kind of compensation made, and another time is they just don't put up negative feedback. And if you've got the money and the interest and you've paid a lot of money for your crystal, you could always take it and get it tested by the experts. Now, actually, before I get into anything else, I just want to remind you, when it comes to buying, online, make sure that you find out what the dimensions are, how long, how high, how wide, what the weight of the crystal is, where it's actually being held currently, and how much is that crystal going to cost you, how much is freight going to cost you. They are all really good I suppose, indicators for you to make an informed decision. A lot of us don't mind paying a little bit more if what we're getting is the real deal and if it's a particularly beautiful crystal that speaks to us. For example, this image on the right, or those little spheres up the top, if they were the genuine article, I'd be interested in buying either of those because those are the blues that I'm attracted to. Having said that, I wouldn't knock back the palm stones that are in that lady's hand there. So now let's get into the spiritual metaphysical benefits of Larimar. And as you can see straight away, this higher self business, the higher realms, is basically the primary focus of the crystal. Some really high vibrational stuff going on here. So it's said to connect you to your higher self, the higher realms. That's about communication, communicating with spirit as well. And if you're into angels and guides, into that. When we talk about the higher consciousness, this is a greater awareness, a state of being, a recognition that within humanity we are all connected. Every single one of us is connected at some point, and what we do to one, we do to another. So we're all brothers and sisters, really. I mean, that can be difficult for people to accept depending on where they're at their journey. Or throughout their journey. I put nature kingdom and earth planetary healing here because of the connection to the dolphins. Dolphins certainly are part of the nature kingdom, but I believe that the Larimar actually helps to connect you to the ocean life, the dolphins, the whales, even the big manta rays and stuff like that. Absolutely beautiful stuff. And in fact, I haven't done it with Larimar. I actually did it as an activity for myself. I remember sitting on a beach up north here in Western Australia and seeing a pod of dolphins, and I just sent love from my heart. And the more love that I sent to them, the closer the dolphins came to me. I love dolphins. Anyway, moving on. It's associated with breaking down any barriers in your heart chakra to open this expansion. And I guess we're talking a little bit about telepathy here. It's supposed to support astral travel. If that's that your spirit going for a visit places, either consciously or when you're sleeping. It's said to purify the environment around you and bring this love and feelings of serenity and peace. If you have an issue with negative entities or negative attachments, it's said to purge them from your environment. So it all brings you down to this space of feeling serenity, connection, and oneness. It's a beautiful crystal. And it's recommended for metaphysical workers and healers, especially to have in their environment, and also, of course, recommended for people wanting to access their own higher consciousness, if you like, as part of reaching their own true potential. And that includes if they're doing interdimensional work, and which you can do by holding it in a meditation. So the list of the physical metaphysical attributes, what a gobful, is not long, but it's powerful. Now, just as always, I'm doing this disclaimer, caution, do not disengage from your medical practitioner when you use the crystals. For example, if you've got thyroid dysfunction or whatever, you wouldn't stop taking your medication while you're working with Larimar. It would complement it, okay? So it's recommended anyway for people with chest and throat conditions. I mean, that could be strep throat, or if people have got hoarseness of the throat, such as myself, perhaps I need to start working with it, that kind of thing. It's going to assist with chest and throat conditions. Now, just remember, this is why I say this is not a long list, but if you stop and you think about this, the chest includes all those organs, which is the heart, the lungs, and all the rest of it. So this is a very large assumption to make when we say chest and throat conditions. And this is where your feedback is very valuable when we talk about what properties or that crystal has, because it's your experience of using it and the observable improvements in your health that you received through using it. So it's also recommended for cellular work. If you've got perhaps an issue in the DNA or whatever, you could meditate with Larimar. If you've got skin conditions such as psoriasis and eczema, and even if you get allergic reactions such as hives, it's supposed to relieve any of those symptoms. It's supposed to help release infection will even act as a protective barrier against that. But if you've got inflammation in any part of your body, it's supposed to reduce the inflammation. And this is one of those large claims as well, where it's supposed to be, if you're running a fever, that it helps to manage your fever. Okay, if you've got stress-related illnesses like high blood pressure, it's said to relieve that and bring that down to a healthy level. If you've got problems in your joints, your arteries, your lymphatic system, your spleen, your tonsils, your adenoids, muscles and ligaments, it's supposed to support good health for all of those things. So if you try it, please do let us know the outcomes. And if you've already tried it, let us know what happened. Thank you. Now, I've got obviously some notes here on the slide to give you an idea of how Larimar can benefit you on your mind and emotional balance. However, I'm going to actually read the notes that I've got here because they're a little bit more expansive. So, anyway, it can be considered a tool of self reflection. If people have tendencies to self sabotage, it's going to be I need to put this allegedly claim stuff up, okay? So, allegedly, people claim that it helps to identify the sabotaging behaviors that limit themselves, that keep them locked in these recurring patterns. If you've got blockages, say, in your head or neck, right? So, while that might be a physical thing, if you've got headaches or problems with neural patterning and that kind of stuff, it can also assist with thought processing, the capacity to process, and that's obviously a mind metaphysical benefit. There was something else when we talk about thinking, though. Thinking and emotions and reactions. If people are really emotionally reactive and they don't stop and process their thoughts, right? The thought processing happens in the frontal lobe, and the emotional reaction happens at the base of the brainstem. So basically what we're saying here is that Larimar connects the brainstem and the frontal lobe in a way where a person will process their responses and reactions to the things that happen around them. Either way, it encourages people to find healthy solutions to problems, to live truthfully and honestly, expressing with kindness and love any needs or when they're uncomfortable or whatever. It's said to enhance and improve wisdom. That is the acquired knowledge that people pick up along the journey. It's also said to foster inner strength, to help people feel more emotionally resilient and stronger. It's recommended in this instance for caregivers. Now, anybody who's a caregiver is going to know that, bottom line is they tend to neglect their own health needs as part of caring for other people. And so quite often they compromise their own personal boundaries and they don't look after themselves. So what else have I got here? There is a lot. There is a real lot. Okay, so it's recommended for people because it's also a mood stabilizer. As I said, this linking between the base of the brain and the front of the brain. It's recommended for people who experience anger that can become very reactive. If people have got depression or bipolar disorders, anxiety, depression type disorders, it will help to quieten the mind and to restore hope. If you've got nervous tendencies, it's going to help to soothe. People that experience panic attacks and phobias should be wearing it, actually. It's recommended for them. I've discussed the communication and the verbal expression, but it's also said to enhance the capacity to listen and hear what other people are saying, because quite often, as well as I do, somebody will be talking to us and we're listening to their words, but we're not hearing the emotional expression behind it. Or, they might be trying to express gently something that's actually really big to them. So when we're really hearing a person, we're hearing what is not said as well. So it's also said to be beneficial for people that are struggling with pain and guilt, actually, because guilt obviously keeps us locked in places, when we feel bad about something we may or may not have done. So it clears away unhealthy patterns and emotions such as guilt. It's an emotional purifier for people who are stuck in a victim mentality and struggling to recover from emotional injury. It's also recommended for them. And this is whether or not they have been diagnosed with trauma or PTSD. There is still this pain. So it's recommended for people that are in that situation. It's said to help overcome any brain fog. So if you're in a new job or trying to find a new direction, or you're stuck at the crossroads of life and trying to make a decision, you just don't know which one to take because you've got so many ideas coming at you, it's said to help get past this. So when we're living and working in our truth, ultimately we are empowered. Okay, so Larimar is said to build the confidence and support a person to live authentic, if I can speak, live authentically, and to support them to be their true self, truth to who they are. Now, the other thing is too, that can all sound so intense, but realistically, Larimar is said to re-inject humor and playfulness in life, okay, in a way that exhibits respect for yourself and for other people, and to be able to maintain your health in a way where you nurture, you take responsibilities for your own emotional well-being, and you seek to inject love into your life. You become independent. So I guess the best way to explain this is, if you need to reclaim your inner child, that's where there's been injury done to you during your early formational years, that you can tap into the causality of some of these emotional reactions, release them and let them go, and then move into the adult part of your life. Not letting what happened to you 10, 20, 30 years ago keep you stuck in this place of ongoing cycles of unhealthy situations. So when we talk about the chakras, Larimar is an interesting one. It's primarily with the throat chakra, which incidentally is a chakra that has a duality to it anyway. It's said to be the seat of the soul, as in communicating with the higher realms. And if we were into Father Creator, Mother Creator, you've got access to that within the throat chakra, basically. But anyway, the reason it's associated, or I should say, the reason I find it interesting is I actually believe it's more associated with the higher heart chakra as opposed to any of the other heart chakras, okay? Because the higher heart chakra tends to tap into all of the things that we've talked about today. But at the same time, it is actually associated with the dark green. If we look at this image here, it's definitely about being more loving and receiving more love. It's definitely about freedom of expression of emotions and honest and open and transparent communication, the capacity to be able to see truth, recognize it, work within it, and process it and understand it, and convert the experience into a positive lesson. What have I got here? Just a note that for those people that are suffering from, say, mental health conditions such as depression, that is actually generally associated with the throat chakra and the orange chakra. So if you've got depression, I would recommend that, if you were lucky enough to have some Larimar, that you use it with carnelian or one of the orange crystals, because they're very good at balancing the emotions and releasing resistance. If you have got anxiety, you could work with, and phobias and that kind of thing, you could actually work with the Larimar. And just off the top of my head, there's any number of crystals you could use, but straight away I actually think of serpentine, and I've got to do a video on that. Serpentine is a very light green crystal, and then there's green fluorite, which is actually really good for conditions like anxiety as well. What else have I got? You could even get a piece of green kyanite. It's actually, I've put on here. Yeah, a green kyanite would be very good for anxiety as well, and for the higher heart chakra. So obviously, yes, you could use Larimar as jewelry. As I said, I've got one as a pendant. However, bearing in mind, remember that that Larimar is not the hardest crystal in the world. It can actually be damaged by harder crystals. When you're not wearing it, if you've got it as jewelry or a palm stone or even a pendulum, you just would make sure that you protect it when you're not using it. You would put it in your jewelry box, perhaps in a pouch. You might wrap it in tissue or something like that when you place it in the jewelry box. And the other thing is too, I'll talk about that on the care slide. Okay, so if you were lucky enough to get it, palm stones, would be a good one for meditation and holding. If you've got small tumbles, yes, I guess you could use it as a grid. And the other thing is, I guess, just keep it in the environment. But you could, if you were seeking specific healing attributes that are listed here, you can actually place them under your pillow at night. You can also wear them in your pouch or put them on your person and that kind of thing. But I always say to people, look, when it comes to crystals, I'm notorious with tumbled stones of shoving a piece in my bra and then taking my bra off when I go to have a shower, and then it hits the floor and it shatters. So that's worth knowing. And look, as far as using Larimar for elixirs, I'm not aware of any toxic impacts for people in that way. But I always say conduct your own research on these things, because the reality is if it's got copper in it and large amounts of copper, well, copper's toxic. So you might not want to be using your Larimar for elixirs, shall we say. Or if you do, you might want to do the way of making an elixir where you put your crystal in a glass, but you don't allow it to become in contact with the water that you're actually going to be drinking. That's a story in itself, one for another day. So when it comes to Larimar as a messenger, obviously I don't actually have it in my lucky dip of crystals, but if I did and somebody pulled it out, obviously the way I would interpret it would depend on the person's situation. Obviously, because I like to connect with people's guides, I like to think, be a guided message, and it would be based on other information that comes through the course of the reading. And I believe that in most instances, from a generic perspective, that if somebody seeks Larimar or is drawn to it, then they're being encouraged by their guides to lighten their vibration, to raise their vibration, to be able to connect with their angels and guides at the very least, and to start looking at other forms of communication, not only their physical and verbal communication and expression, but also the way they self-speak to themselves, and even look at things like telepathy. So, for example, if a person's got a pet that's ailing, they can communicate telepathically, and they might be being encouraged to do that. If they've got a desire to connect with the marine life or ocean life, then it might be a case of go and meditate at the ocean and take your Larimar with you and just sit there and send love to all of the ocean's animals, and then see which ones present. If you're in an area, which of course I was up north, sometimes you can see whales and sometimes you can see dolphins. And when the dolphins were on the horizon for me, I just sent them so much love with a please come closer, please come closer. And they did. They actually came very close to me. So I could see the whole pod. It was absolutely amazing. Other times it might be to the caregivers to say, look, you need to be spending some time on self-care. And this is going to be a case of visiting your boundaries or revisiting them and making sure that you set aside time for self-care, as part of keeping their emotional and stability of thought and mind, if we like. And then other times, if we're talking about prediction, it's a reminder you are loved, and the divine seeks to connect with you and to bring greater joy to your life. And sometimes it can mean that happier times are on the radar if things have been particularly difficult for them. So as far as caring for your Larimar goes, there's a couple of points to remember. One is, in the first instance, it's soft-ish. I shouldn't say soft because it's not super soft, but it is susceptible to damage. So you want to make sure that you look after it. The other thing is, for the Australians, it's photosensitive. It will fade. The blue will fade with time if exposed to too much heat and light. So if you're one of those people that likes to put your tumbles or your ornamental, goodness me, my puppy, or your ornamentals on the windowsill, you would not do that in Australia. Certainly not in some of our hot areas, such as Kalgoorlie, the Goldfields, or in the Pilbara, Queensland, Northern Territory. Take a lot of care with that. This is just with how you're using your Larimar. When it comes to your jewellery, take it off when you are doing any kind of housework. Don't allow it to be exposed to the chemicals. If you're having a shower, there are chemicals in some shampoos and it may cause a reaction. Obviously, if you've got Larimar and you've used it in this way, please let us know your feedback. The colour may be affected. The advice is not to wear Larimar in the swimming pool or saunas for the same reasons, that it can be damaged by heat and it can be damaged by water. And if the jewellery or the gemstone is set in 925 silver, the silver can actually become discoloured and tarnished. I'm just going to push on past the puppy running madly in and out of the room, squeaking his toy, because I'm on a time limit today. But going back to Larimar, my information is that it does tolerate an ultrasonic cleaner, but I'm always wary and hesitant to make recommendations, okay? I would be more inclined to clean it, whether it's jewellery or tumbled. You know, if you feel that it's got grime on it, if a kid has grabbed it in their greasy little hands or whatever, like these tumble stones here, I mean, you could wash it. Frankly, I actually would just use a damp cloth to wipe it off and then dry it. But worst case scenario, you could actually put it in a mild soapy water, very mild detergent, and wash it off. I'm sure you must have heard that. Anyway, and back he comes. I'll pause. So if it's set in silver or gold, of course, like with this ring here, once again, you could actually use the soapy water. I'm trying not to laugh here. The soapy, and lose my beat. I'll pause again. The joke about this is that I've actually gathered up all of his toys and put them in a basket so that they're not scattered throughout the house, because I've got a client this morning. However, he's just rediscovered the basket and that it's full of all his favourite toys. So I'm going to push on. Okay, so back to cleansing your jewellery. As with all of them, I do, if it's set in metal such as gold or silver, I will actually put these items, not soak them indefinitely. It might be pop them into a glass of very lukewarm, mild soapy water. So it's a mild detergent. It could be one of those ergonomic type ones. Check out what you've got at your local store, or make your own dishwashing detergent that is non-toxic, and leave it soak for, I don't know, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. You might need to pull it out. I will use a soft toothbrush, brush around, you know, especially if it's a pendant, because you get the grime build up in there, especially in Australia because of obviously the weather, and then wipe that off. Now, if you get it all off, then you can rinse it off with some water and then dry it with a soft cloth. You might need to put it back in the cup for a little while. I just use a coffee cup, but you wouldn't leave it there indefinitely. My information too is, and I've got no scientific evidence to prove this, but some information I found is that when the Larimar is dropped in water, it becomes bluer. It actually absorbs water. So this is one of the reasons why I wouldn't recommend leaving it soaking in water. Once you've cleaned it off, if it's a jewellery item, put it back in the jewellery box. Now, if you're into the metaphysical properties, after you've cleaned it, what you could do to recharge is what I do. I use selenite. Sometimes I use the incense, which could be sage, could be sandalwood, because I'm in Australia, we like sandalwood. It could be your Palo Santo, anything like that. But of course, I do have the video on how to cleanse and charge your crystals for metaphysical use. If it's ornamental, you might just need to blow the dust off it from time to time with those air pressure can blower things. I can't remember what they're called. And then worst case scenario, just wipe a damp cloth over it. Obviously, you're just removing the excess, and then dry off with another dry cloth. So, my friends, that is it for today as far as Larimar goes. The little boy has run out the room, so I'll try and squeeze this in before he comes back. I'll just say, look, thank you very much for being part of my journey. If you've got any of your own information that you want to add to this, I will be interested always. I'm interested in other people's experiences, but I guarantee you there will be people at some point in time, if not this week, if not next week, where somebody will see your comment and your experiences and respond to it. So please feel free to leave a comment. And otherwise, just say g'day. I'm always open to a g'day. For now, though, I'm going to say love you, leave you, catch you on the next video. Take care. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye for now.